Okay, let's unpack this. What if the reality we experience every day is just one layer of something far more profound?
Mm.
Today, we're diving deep into some truly mind-bending ideas from a top physicist, actually a key figure in creating the microprocessor, who proposes that the physical world as we know it might not be, well, the fundamental reality.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, isn't it, that someone with such deep roots in the tangible world of computing is now suggesting a reality that goes way beyond our usual grasp of matter and energy.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to explore the source material you shared with us. It really unpacks this physicist's perspective on reality, consciousness, and the very strange realm of quantum physics.
Right.
We're going to look at things like why quantum computing even works and maybe what our deepest nature might actually be.
And if we connect this to the broader view presented in the sources, the argument is really for a deeper level of reality, something beyond our familiar space and time, where things like, well, feelings and information actually originate.
So the everyday world we perceive, the one our bodies and senses build for us.
Yeah, that could be more like an interpretation, an incomplete snapshot of something much, much larger.
And get this right from the start. The source material throws in a real curveball.
Hmm.
The idea that our own cells are holographic.
Yo, right. That part.
Apparently, each one of your trillions of cells contains the complete blueprint of you. It's not just a collection of parts. It's like every tiny piece holds a reflection of the whole.
Which really makes you rethink the standard biological model, doesn't it?
Totally. You start to think about how that implies this much greater level of interconnectedness within your own body than we typically consider.
Instead of just a bag of independent parts, maybe we're looking at a system where each element is intrinsically linked to and reflects the entire organism. It's a very different picture.
Right. Okay, so to get started, let's look at why this physicist believes our current understanding of physics might have some, fundamental limitations. The source material really digs into the boundaries of classical physics first.
Yeah, and at its core, classical physics, well, it treats matter as being made up of separate, distinct objects, things you can isolate and measure independently.
Like hitting a baseball, maybe.
Exactly, a discrete object, predictable motion based on the forces acting on it. Very neat and tidy in a way.
But then quantum physics comes along and it tells a different story, especially at the most fundamental levels.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of these separate little particles, things appear more like disturbances or states within a field.
Yeah, the source uses a really helpful analogy here, comparing it to a wave on the ocean.
Oh, I like that one.
Right. The wave isn't really separate from the water itself. It's just a manifestation of the ocean's energy, a pattern moving through it.
And the physicist extends this idea to us.
Exactly. If our bodies are ultimately made of these quantum states, these wave-like things, then we aren't isolated machines either. We are dynamic systems inherently woven into these underlying fields, just like those waves in the ocean.
Which leads to this fascinating idea of our bodies as fields of intelligence.
Yeah, constantly adapting self-aware networks.
It's quite a leap, isn't it? To think that this isn't just some abstract concept, but is actually rooted in quantum physics principles. It suggests a kind of fundamental responsiveness that goes way beyond simple mechanics.
Absolutely. It shifts us from seeing life as purely mechanical to something that emphasizes deep interconnectedness and an inherent ability to respond dynamically.
Okay, now for a long time, science has kind of operated with this unspoken rule, right? If you can't measure it, it doesn't really exist. The source material highlights this as a pretty significant factor in how we've approached understanding life itself.
Well, and that focus on measurement has been incredibly valuable, obviously. It let us build bridges, computers, understand and manipulate the physical world.
No doubt.
But the potential downside is it's also led to this tendency to reduce life to what we can objectively observe and quantify, chemical reactions, electrical signals in the brain,
Yeah.
because those are the things we can easily record and analyze.
But the physicist argues that this approach might be missing something absolutely essential.
The invisible connections, yeah. These underlying quantum fields that are, in a sense, the very fabric holding everything together.
And what's so intriguing, as the source points out, is that quantum physics itself has shown us that the very building blocks we once thought were permanent and separate particles, they're actually fleeting expressions of these underlying fields. They aren't fixed, independent things. They just arise and dissolve like those waves we talked about.
It's a much more fluid picture of matter.
And because our bodies are made up of these quantum states, we aren't truly isolated either. The source mentions entanglement.
Right, where these states can be interconnected in ways that just defy classical explanation. It's like they can influence each other instantly, even across distances.
So this whole picture of us as completely self-contained machines,
Yeah.
well, it might have been a bit of an oversimplification.
It really challenges our basic intuition about being separate individuals, doesn't it?
Definitely. So if the classical model tends to see consciousness as, I don't know, just a byproduct of complex brain chemistry, what's the quantum perspective, according to this physicist?
Well, the quantum model, as it's presented here, it basically reverses that relationship. It proposes that consciousness isn't just some fortunate accident or something that emerges from complexity,
Right.
but rather it's a fundamental aspect of reality itself. It's not an end result. It's closer to a foundational element.
Okay, this brings us to a really crucial distinction the source makes between classical and quantum information. We're familiar with classical info, right? Bits that can be copied perfectly.
Yeah, zeros and ones copied endlessly without loss.
Yeah.
But quantum information, represented by qubits, it operates under totally different rules.
And different principles.
Precisely. One of the absolute key differences is the no cloning theorem.
Meaning?
You literally cannot create an identical copy of an unknown quantum bit. And the very act of trying to measure or observe a qubit forces it to, well, collapse. Yeah, it goes from a state of multiple possibilities into just one single definite state. And in doing that, you actually lose all the other potential information it held.
Huh. So the source points out that the maximum definitive information you can pull out of a qubit is just one classical bit. The inherent quantumness somehow gets lost when you measure it.
Exactly. And this private, non-replicable nature of quantum information is then linked in the source material to the nature of our own subjective experiences.
How so?
Well, hey, think about it this way. Can you download or transfer the feeling of joy you have right now to someone else?
No, of course not.
Your experience of happiness or sadness is uniquely yours. It can't be copied and pasted like a digital file. So the suggestion is that consciousness, with its intensely personal private experiences, might be connected to this deeper, non-replicable realm of quantum information.
Wow. Okay, that brings up a pretty radical idea then.
Yeah.
Maybe our brains aren't actually producing consciousness at all. Maybe they function more like sophisticated receivers or filters, tuning into some pre-existing field of awareness.
That perspective could potentially explain why algorithms, despite getting incredibly sophisticated and processing vast amounts of data, they still struggle with genuine understanding, real meaning.
Right. They can manipulate symbols and structures.
Yeah, they can generate a poem, maybe, but they don't feel the emotions behind the words.
The source even makes the point that even if an AI suggests a brilliant idea, the AI itself doesn't know it's a good idea in the way a human does.
Exactly. We recognize the value, the meaning, based on our own conscious comprehension.
And in this view, consciousness and free will aren't just things that pop up later. They are fundamental aspects of this underlying reality.
It really does invert the traditional scientific model, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests that those subjective qualities we feel so deeply, the ones that are so hard to measure, they might actually hold the key to understanding the very nature of reality.
Okay, let's talk about one of the really big unresolved puzzles in quantum physics, the collapse of the wave function. The source describes it as this pivotal moment, right? When a realm of possibilities crystallizes into a single actuality upon observation.
Yes, it's that mysterious transition. A quantum system exists in multiple potential states at once. Think of it like being potentially here and there simultaneously.
Until you look.
Until it's measured or observed. Then, boom, it manifests in just one definite state. And what's so perplexing is that classical physics gives us absolutely no mechanism to explain how or why this happens.
And it's instant. Unpredictable.
Seems to be. Instantaneous, unpredictable, and it doesn't seem to follow the normal cause and effect rules we're used to.
And this is where things take a truly mind-bending turn in the source material. The physicist poses this really thought-provoking idea. What if this collapse isn't just something that happens to the quantum world, but something that happens at least partly through us? What if our own conscious awareness plays a fundamental role in solidifying reality?
It's a radical thought. The core idea is that a quantum particle doesn't seem to settle into a definite state until it is, in some way, observed.
But then you hit the question, what exactly counts as observed?
Exactly. Is it a sophisticated scientific instrument, a camera? Or does it require something with the capacity for subjective experience? consciousness, maybe.
Which suggests we might not be just passive observers looking at a pre-existing universe.
We might actually be active participants in shaping the reality we experience, just through the act of our awareness.
Yeah.
It's a profound shift in how we see our place in the cosmos.
And the source connects this back to quantum information again.
Yeah, proposing that our inner experience itself is a form of quantum information, and the collapse of the wave function could be intrinsically linked to our capacity for free will, the moment we choose, or focus our attention on a particular outcome.
It really blurs those traditional lines, doesn't it, between the objective world of matter and the subjective world of mind.
Suggesting they were never truly separate in the first place, maybe just two sides of the same underlying reality.
Because if quantum states only become definite when measured,
And measurement requires some kind of interaction, some reference point, then maybe consciousness itself is a fundamental aspect of that reference frame.
okay, let's dig into meaning. The source makes this really crucial distinction between classical information, which is essentially just raw data, right, zeros and ones, and the rich meaning that is inherent in our conscious experience, or feelings, sensations.
Right. Classical information, like a long string of numbers, it doesn't possess inherent meaning on its own. A computer can process it, sure, but it doesn't understand it.
But our inner world.
Oh, it's just overflowing with felt meaning that cannot be simply reduced to numerical data points. Think about the difference between reading a clinical description of sadness and actually feeling sad. Worlds apart.
And just like quantum information, these deeply personal feelings, these conscious experiences, they can't be copied or perfectly reproduced.
Exactly. My experience of joy is uniquely mine. You can empathize, you can understand maybe, but you can't literally download that feeling into yourself.
Which, again, supports this idea that our subjective experiences might be manifestations of underlying quantum phenomena, expressed through the brain rather than solely generated by it.
It's a subtle but profound difference in perspective.
The source even proposes that meaning itself might originate from within our consciousness, and the external world we perceive is more like a map, not the territory.
Meaning our interpretation, our understanding, actively shapes the reality we experience.
And Olivo's theorem is mentioned this 1 bit per quantum bit idea. What are the implications there?
Well, the source suggests it has pretty significant implications for fields like neuroscience, philosophy, even AI and technology. It suggests there might be fundamental limits to how completely we can replicate subjective experience using purely classical computational systems. You can simulate the structure, maybe, but not the feeling, not the qualia.
Okay, this leads to a really empowering shift in perspective then. The physicist suggests the universe doesn't just contain meaning out there, waiting for us to find it.
Right. Rather, we are the source of meaning. We transition from being, passive observers in a potentially meaningless void,
To active creators of the meaning we find in the world.
and this aligns beautifully with the quantum physics perspective that reality is fundamentally holistic. It's not just a collection of separate interacting parts.
But a deeply interconnected web. Relationships, underlying fields.
Yeah, the analogy used is the dancer and the dance. You can't truly separate the two, can you? They're interdependent aspects of the same single phenomenon.
And trying to reduce the richness of reality to simple binary choices, a 0 or a 1.
It's like trying to capture the complexity and beauty of a full symphony using only 2 musical notes. It's just a vast oversimplification. It misses the essence, the quality of what's really happening.
The source then introduces this profound concept of consciousness becoming aware of itself. And that's the genesis of individuality.
Yes, but crucially, this individuality isn't seen as a fundamental separation from everything else. It's more like a unique viewpoint, a heart hole, as the source poetically puts it.
A heart hole?
Yeah, like a unique perspective through which the same unified field of consciousness experiences itself. Like light being refracted through different facets of a single crystal, same light, different angles, different colors maybe.
So in this model, life isn't just some random accident in a cold, uncaring universe.
No, it's seen as a natural outcome, a result of this underlying awareness folding in on itself, creating complexity, diversity, and these individual perspectives.
So each conscious being becomes like a unique lens.
Exactly, a unique lens through which the fundamental awareness of the universe can perceive and experience itself. Pretty amazing thought.
Wow. Okay, now this clearly has some potentially profound implications for how we understand life and, well, even the concept of death. The source uses a really compelling analogy.
The drone.
Ah, yes, the drone analogy.
Uh,
The idea is that your consciousness is like the operator of a remote drone.
and the body is the drone. Right. Your consciousness receives sensory information from the body, the drone, and it can influence the body's actions. But the core conscious experience itself, the feeling of being the operator, isn't necessarily located within the physical structure of the drone. It's separate, in a way.
Okay, so if consciousness isn't inextricably tied to the physical body, then death.
Then death might not be the absolute end of consciousness. It could be more like a disconnection. The physical drone stops functioning, it goes dark.
But the operator?
The operator consciousness potentially returns to its original source or shifts its focus, its awareness elsewhere. It doesn't just cease to exist because the vehicle stopped working.
The source even touches upon near-death experiences here, doesn't it, as sort of anecdotal evidence?
Yes, where individuals report having vivid, coherent experiences, out-of-body sensations, awareness of events happening around their physical body.
Like seeing their own surgery or hearing conversations.
Exactly. Even when their brain activity is significantly reduced, or in some cases, apparently undetectable by current measures. It certainly challenges the purely materialistic view that consciousness is only a product of brain activity.
And there's another powerful analogy the source brings up. The physical world we perceive with our senses might be like a very, very narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, we're only seeing and interacting with this tiny sliver of what's potentially there.
Like a cell phone antenna.
Perfect example. Your phone's antenna is constantly bathed in signals, radio waves, TV signals, countless conversations that your unaided senses are completely oblivious to. They're real, they're there, but outside your sensory range.
So the idea is that upon death, when the physical filter of the body drops away,
Consciousness might not simply vanish, because maybe it was never fully confined within that limited sensory bandwidth to begin with. It doesn't need to go anywhere if it wasn't entirely in the body in the first place.
the source then describes this fundamental moment, the flash of self-awareness, the instant when consciousness becomes aware of its own existence.
And it's characterized as being immediate, silent, and complete, like a foundational event in the emergence of individual experience.
And it's in that moment of self-recognition that individuality arises.
Yes, but again, not as a separation or division, but as that unique angle, that distinct perspective from which the unified field of consciousness can experience its own infinite potential.
So intelligence, in this view, isn't just about calculation speed, is it? Processing power.
No, it's about something deeper. It's about knowing meaning, feeling truth in an intuitive way, recognizing beauty, capacities that seem to be the hallmarks of conscious beings, not just complex machines.
And self-awareness becomes incredibly significant then.
Hugely. Because when we truly grasp our interconnectedness, that we are these individual expressions of a single unified field of consciousness, it naturally fosters cooperation and empathy.
Rather than competition and separation.
Yeah. Exactly. If we're all waves on the same ocean, fighting each other makes less sense.
Right. The source concludes with a really powerful statement. The future belongs to the deepest awareness, not just the fastest systems.
It suggests a fundamental evolution in how we understand ourselves and our place within the larger tapestry of reality.
It really encourages us to move beyond a purely mechanistic, materialistic view of the world.
And to open ourselves to the possibility of a reality that is far richer, more interconnected, and ultimately perhaps more meaningful than we typically imagine.
So, just to recap this deep dive, we've explored a perspective that really profoundly challenges our conventional understanding of reality. It suggests consciousness isn't just some lucky accident of biology.
But maybe a fundamental aspect of existence itself, deeply intertwined with the more fundamental quantum field.
And this perspective really invites us to reconsider the very nature of our own being, the intricate dance between mind and matter, and the underlying fabric of the reality we inhabit.
It's a lot to take in, definitely.
It really is. Okay, here's a final thought for you to ponder, something to maybe let percolate. If our awareness does actively participate in shaping reality at the quantum level, even in some small way, what profound responsibility does that place on each of us, individually and collectively, in terms of where we direct our attention, our intentions, our overall state of being? Think about how that perspective might subtly, yet significantly, shift your understanding of your own inner experiences and your connection to the world around you. It's definitely something worth letting sink in.